found that the best way to avoid puddles of color is to get your paper wet on one side first, all the way wet, and then turn it over and get it soaking wet on that side as well. That will help it kind of adhere to the table and keep it from warping and forming puddles that just collect all of the pigment you're playing with. To create your background, you're going to want to use colors that are pretty close to each other on the color wheel. So analogous is pretty good. You can see I'm using cool colors here. I have blues and greens, and I'm just using a lot of water and pigment. You can drop the color and watch it spread out. And you can also spread the color, kind of use broad strokes with your brushes. I was really having a lot of fun with a brush this size, but it also could be interesting to try using bigger brushes. This kind of painting has a lot of repetition and rhythm, and so it is really aided by listening to fantastic music while you're working. When your painting is dry, go ahead and look around until you find a dragon or creature or whatever you find in the clouds of your watercolor painting. As you can see, I found my dragon here. It's kind of a little bit of a Chinese dragon style. And I'm putting a little bit more dark blue where the shadows are, and I'm using white to show the highlights. It's pretty transparent paint, so I'm doing layers and layers, adding some details. In addition to my imagination, which I did use to create this dragon, I also relied on several different pictures of Chinese dragons to help give me an idea of what traditional Chinese dragons look like so that I could explore and play with those visuals. Observational drawing is an important part of developing craft, and the more you do, the easier it gets. And then you also kind of learn what things look like. So when you're looking around in your clouds, you can kind of see the dragon there. Get the paper wet on both sides so it adheres to the tabletop and won't bend and warp as much. You will find that as your painting dries, it does change a little bit. It lightens. You can see right here. And I looked at this a little bit before I saw a more European type dragon, kind of more of a modern version, the kind that I grew up reading stories about. This is a Miss Link dragon. I actually began this one with highlights with the white paint kind of showing the top part of the dragon's neck and wings. And then from there, I started using a bluish purple blackish color I created for shadows. Now watch the claw. I'm erasing it with a tissue. You can do that sometimes if it's still a little bit damp, and can create some flexibility when you're working. I sometimes, well, as you can see, I'm doing that multiple times because I wasn't happy with those claws, so I keep on going back, fixing it, changing it, moving it around a little bit. You have to be careful not to overdo it, but it can be a pretty nice tool. In addition to my own imagination, I used two visual aids to help me get the details I really wanted to include in this artwork and kind of give me an idea of what would make it look more like the dragons that are in my head. All right, add lots of water and different colors. You can see I'm using some colors that aren't right next to each other on the color wheel here. So it creates some nice contrast. So let's try that too. The transparency of watercolor is a really important part of letting the original watercolor cloud painting shine through. So when you use your white, make sure you water it down enough, as well as your other colors. Only do really, really dark in very limited areas. So that way you're not covering over the amazingness that you created by exploring. Ta-da! It's something.